Hello. So I really missed chatting with you, and I thought I'll do something easy at this time, and we'll just talk about quirks or things that make our personality to have a uniqueness to it, and just something that makes you you. There are things that I have picked up other people told me that were slightly unique and different and maybe weird. And some of the things I just have noticed in myself that I wanted to talk about and just kind of make fun of it, but in a very light-hearted way. Because again, it's something that makes me me, and I love that. I embrace that. I'm aware of it. The first thing is I smile a lot and I talk with my hands all the time. And I oftentimes use humor to leverage the situation and to kind of lighten up the situation too. So quite often I am a smiler. I'm a person who just talks randomly and smiling, at least with new people, I'll say that, or when I'm nervous. If it's like my husband or my daughter and we're having a deep conversation, I'm not going to be smiling. But for first impression, I have noticed it just automatically goes into a smile mode, which is something that it's just it. Since we're talking about the hands, I wanted to say I have this thing. I don't think it's a condition. It's probably like a sensory textural preference of some sort, but I have this dryness intolerance. Whenever I touch something super dry and almost powdery, but not all powders, because I can use cooking flour like rice flour, oat flour, whatever, and I can use it very easily. I can make cookies and cakes and stuff and pies, but as soon as I touch things that are like wafers, dry wafer, or a chip that has a lot of dusting of seasoning on top of it, whenever I know I'm gonna have something dry like that, like nachos, or if I'm gonna have like share a bowl of chips, like in a Mexican restaurant, right? So what I would do is I would get water with ice, even if I don't drink it, and I would either collect condensation from the top of the cup and like wet my hands before I would touch a chip, or I would legit like just dip my finger real quick like that and just submerge it. And I would just eat a chip this way because I just cannot touch it, and it's just my fingers. I haven't noticed that if I actually put something in my mouth like with a fork that's dry, I don't have that. It's just my fingertips don't like anything dry. Also the bottom of the cups, I'm not gonna touch it because it just grosses me out already. This little dry thing, like unfinished clay. I have actually noticed my daughter says that whenever she touches cardboards, it gives her like weird shivers and it makes her feel in pain almost. So I have a feeling she has a similar thing. But I haven't noticed anybody else. And I swear, when I was little in Russia, they don't actually give you water with anything anywhere. And I don't remember anybody ever carrying water with them. So you would eat, but there would not necessarily be water around you, especially not iced water. I think the first time in my life I've tried iced water was in America when I was 18. And I'm not lying, I swear, nobody ever had iced water of any kind in Russia. We had cold drinks. The bottom line is, when I was little, I had to lick my fingers every time like that and make them wet, and then I would touch like a wafer or something that's dusty dry. Well, since we're talking about intolerances, I've noticed that I have sensitivity to cold and hot drinks. I know a lot of people have that, but not just drinks, but like soups. Any food, I like it to be warm. I don't actually like cold things, and I don't like hot things. I need everything to be sort of in the middle. If it's a soup, I cannot eat a hot soup or a hot coffee, hot tea. And can I just ask, what are you supposed to do when you order coffee and they don't give you any space to put water or anything like cold milk into it? What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to just hold it and wait for 15 minutes for it to cool off? I usually make sure that there's space at the top And I would just bring a bottle of water with me and I would put it into the whatever beverage that's hot that I'm drinking, because otherwise I'm just not gonna enjoy it for a long time. If I get hot soup or if I warm it up and it's too hot, I legit just put ice cubes in it, okay? Soup, ice cubes. If it's hot oatmeal bowl, same thing, I would put ice cubes in it. If it's some kind of a dish, sort of like ragu, like salsa-ish, something that is okay to have water in it, I would add an ice cube in that too, even if it's just a regular meal. I wouldn't put it like on a steak or anything like that, but it needs to be lukewarm. Everything needs to be lukewarm. That's where I live. I live in the middle. I remember when I was a kid, my dad would insist on drinking hot tea. Hot tea. My dad would do like the loudest slurping because he was trying to cool off the liquid as he was drinking, like. And I just remember my whole childhood, I was just like, oh my God. And same thing would be with the soup, but he loved it hot, like just boiling hot where you can't stand it. And since we're talking about food, I'm a person who likes to mix things. I love mash. My husband, when we first started dating, he noticed that about me, and he's just like, are you gonna just make your Masha mash? I'm like, what? He's like, are you gonna make Masha mash? I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, you're just gonna mix everything together. And he's a person who likes everything separated, and like, broccoli's right here, mashed potatoes are right here, and like chicken is here, and everything's like just neatly organized on the plate. And I look at him, I'm like, okay, it's fine. Even if I get that on my plate, I would like mix it all up. Or I would just do bites. Like if I'm in a restaurant, I'm not just gonna mix it all up. I will take bites of each on one fork, but the bite has to be of everything on that plate at the same time. That's why I love things like tacos, burritos. They're so easy, or sandwiches really, because you bite and it's just like you get all the layers and everything's mixed up. I also have noticed that I'm always cold. I don't remember exactly when it started, but I'm always cold. My fingers and my toes are cold 24/7. They're almost never warm, even when it's hot outside. I can be sweating in the middle, but my hands and my toes are cold. But I have always thought that it may be because I naturally have low blood pressure and low heart rate, and I get dizzy oftentimes if I don't eat on time or if I don't move my body enough. My resting heart rate is like 52, 51, which I know is quite low, and maybe that gives me sort of a little leverage in that I can, if I slow down, I can really slow down and like deepen into that state. So that's something. I'm cold all the time, and I get dizzy if I don't eat, but I also can really lower myself in a very quiet, calm state into quite deep state of relaxation if I actually choose to. For the longest time, especially in the beginning when I first moved to the United States, I used to mix up words constantly. When I started dating my husband, who was an American, and before that I was with the Russian-speaking people before that. So even though I spoke English, it was more for work. It was never really for like life occurrences. So when I started talking to my now husband, when we go on dates, so walk around, he would constantly pinpoint. He's like, you said it again. I'm like, what did I say? He says, you mixed up the words again. And I'm sure it's an immigrant thing, but he used to love it. He would just bust out laughing every time I would say something like that. I forgot most of those quirky words. I wish I wrote them down because they were adorable. But a couple of them I had is like, one time we were walking and I saw a big shrub, and it was those pointy leaf mistletoe shrub, and I'm like, oh hey, look, that's a camel toe shrub. And he started laughing. He's like, what do you mean camel toe? I'm like, the camel toe shrub. Back then I didn't even know what camel toe meant, like in Urban Dictionary. And he was laughing. He's like, that's not it at all. So it was things like that. The other one I said in my videos, I think for the longest time I said crooks and nannies instead of nooks and crannies. I kept saying crooks and nannies. Just, I remember people were like, that's a great band name, like a rocker or like alternative rock band name. Crooks and nannies. It was funny. So, and to this day, I think I sometimes say words, but my English has definitely gotten better with practice. So my adorable traits are going away as my accent is disappearing. And we actually, me and my husband, we realized that this summer, well, in June, May, it was my 20th year since I came to United States, and I didn't realize it until like a couple of days ago, which is kind of cool. So congratulations, I've been here for 20 years, you guys. I've also realized that I've always had these traits. I don't want to say OCD because I know we're not supposed to use that term. I just don't know what else to call it. Perfectionism traits, I guess. When I did talk to my psychiatrist a few times, she would bring up that I have obsessive compulsive tendencies, but I never diagnosed me with that or said that it's something I have to look into at all. But I do get obsessive over things, but again, I find it to be my strength. Never found it to be any kind of debilitating or life-altering experience, which I know it is for many people. So I don't want to use that term lightly, but I guess we'll just call it perfectionism more. But when I was little, I used to always line everything up. I remember when I was in high school, or maybe just in school, I always had to take out my pencils or my pens from my pencil case, and I would like neatly organize them, and had to be parallel, not just to each other, but to the table and even the table grain. There was the grain of the table, and I would have to very neatly, like it had to be the same amount of space between the top and the side. And it was like a whole thing that once I would sit down and take my pens out, I would line them up pretty, and then throughout the class they could get messy. I didn't care, but this first thing, it was like super important for me to line them up. And even to this day, if I'm like doing something, like if I'm sitting and my fork is certain space away from my plate, I like tap it a little bit, just gonna move it a bit, because to my eye there's a certain space that it has to be. This little, again, obsessiveness over small details the way they should be. But again, I find them to be cute. I'm in no way thinks that they're bad. I just feel like it's something that makes me. Ever since I have become a mom, which is about 5.5 years ago, I have noticed just how deeply I started feeling everything, and specifically anything that has to do with child and mother thing. So every time I watch something beautiful happen, like somebody is getting married, or somebody's having more children, or just some kind of prideful moment between a mom and a child, I literally immediately start bawling. And I remember I never was like that. I could empathize with people. I could, if it was a truly, touching story or a terrible story, I could obviously empathize as a person. But like, this is a different level. It's so painful that I guess I put it through the prism of what if it would be my child, and it's just a very different level of emotional distress sometimes. Sometimes if I watch something, terrible in a movie happen, or in the real world, which I try not to watch, I understand I have to, but it's so painful that I don't want to experience that, because then I'm broken for days and I can't do anything about it, and I'm neglecting my life and my family just by being so extremely depressed that some terrible things are happening. So for a long time now, I have chosen not to watch news, and I don't care what people say. I don't care what people say. You don't have to do that. I have tried. Okay? I have tried watching news, and the things that go through my head, the places I go, I'm very unproductive. I'm not solving any issues, and I'm not helping anybody by being in that state. Am I aware that this is happening? Yes. But do I need to sit and watch it and like take it all in? I cannot. I believe some people are not meant to watch every single terrible thing that is happening to the world. I don't think so. Okay. Privilege, yes, whatever you want to call it, please do. There's enough of things that are happening in everyday life for everybody, one of us, that not everybody wants to consume all of that tragedy and just despair and terrible feelings. Okay, I feel like I shouldn't even be explaining myself about that, but in our day and age, you have to explain yourself about these things, your choices, and people then make certain assumption about you, how privileged you are, how terribly maybe tone deaf you are and stuff like that. But that's not what the video is about. The bottom line is I get the same pride and joy also for people who achieve things. So when something positive happens to someone, like I was watching Olympics and I saw all these young people, these beautiful champions, get the medals and win their place in the world in the Olympics. And I just, sometimes they would show the parents and sometimes they didn't. And I just would sit there and I would just beam with the smile because I could imagine the pride that those parents are experiencing for their child. And I would, so it wasn't really for the country or the athlete as much as it was for the parents that I thought are probably really experiencing it. We watch all the times like Disney movies and cartoons and stuff like that with Mila. And every single time, almost in every single movie, there's a scene where it's just a little tearjerker. And what do you think? I cry. And literally Mila sits there and she's like, Mama's gonna cry. And I'm like, stop it, let me feel it. And it's the cutest little thing. Sometimes can cry when something beautiful happens. So I think I'm just a crier. When I experience beautiful emotions, when I see something incredibly beautiful, sometimes I literally just a walk in the nature and I would just stand there under the leaves and it would just bathe me in its glorious existence. And I would just stand there and there was just a little water trickling somewhere. Just as an example, beautiful birds are chirping, the leaves are just shushing all around me, and I'm just standing there and the wind is blowing at my hair and the sun is shining on my face, and I can literally stand there and just experience the highest euphoria of just love and connection and spiritual experience in a way, just, and I would just start crying just because of how beautiful the feeling is. So I can do that too. And same thing goes for something beautiful, like a beautiful piece of art or a beautiful song that's very touching in the words or melody, and it would just happen, something happens to me as I cry. I know I'm not the only one, and a lot of people do that, so but it's just something happens more often since I became a mom. So okay, and so the last one I have on my list is the sensation of sending love waves. I don't know if people can actually feel that through camera, but in real life, for the longest time, I've realized that if I focus, especially if I'm hugging a person or I'm very close to a person, and if I sort of zone in, and I'm not saying I can, but it feels like I can like push a wave of love out of me towards that person. It usually has to be a person. I haven't done it just into space. So it has to be some kind of an image of a person in front of me usually. And the strongest I've been experiencing it in the beginning when I would hug my husband now, then boyfriend, and I would hug Daryl, and I would like shoot it almost on purpose, and I would just hug him and not just feel the love, but I would want to actually send it to him, and I would almost feel it just melting into his body, coming out and sort of oozing and exuding it. I love that so much. I also feel like sometimes I do feel it coming towards me, also from Daryl the most. And whenever I hug my daughter, if I can remember doing that, I try to push that too and kind of send out that wave of love. And again, I think I've tried doing it on camera a few times. I don't know if it actually comes out, but I can't physically see it. I can't describe it, but it's there. It's not just a thought. It's like physically, almost like a breath releasing out and going out. So sort of radiating the love. And I call it love. It's more like warmth and just, I guess it is love, right? Love sensation. So it's quite beautiful. I love experiencing that even when I able to push that, because sometimes I'm not. Okay, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was interesting to you, and I hope you learned something new. Maybe you can write down in the comments and tell me something that you find to be a quirk of yours that is either a strength or just a unique trait that you enjoy about yourself, even if it's not perfect. And that's that. I just wanted to share. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.